Okay, let's get to work.
Welcome to my baking marathon. Today, I'm stocking the freezer with lots of homemade bread for my family of 6. My goal is to use mostly freshly milled flour, and I'll be baking a mix of sourdough and yeasted breads too. These are staples I always like to have on hand, like burger buns, sandwich bread, tortillas, pizza dough, bagels, and more. As a busy mom, I love prepping in bulk to help the rest of my week run more smoothly. Of course, every time I take on a project like this, there are always a few challenges along the way. I just did double the amount of salt. 2 tablespoons of salt is definitely way too much. I think it's gonna work. It doesn't always work out, but I don't let mistakes discourage me. Instead, I use them as a chance to grow and learn new skills in the kitchen. I'll be wrapping up the day by warming up one of my make-ahead freezer meals for a simple but delicious dinner at the end of a busy day. This is comfort food at its finest. If you're looking for some bread baking joy and motivation in the kitchen today, you've landed in the right place. I've got a big video planned for you today, so I hope you're ready to settle in and hang out with me. I'm gonna make a lot of bread today, and so I'm gonna start by cleaning out my mill. I'm running some rice through it, and this really helps clean it up. And I'm making some quick sourdough sandwich bread. This recipe is on my blog. I like to use hard red wheat as well as kamut and hard white wheat berries. This is just a blend that I have enjoyed. And you can follow the link in my description for the full recipe, but I'm going to take you through my process. So you need 900 grams of wheat berries, and I'm going to go ahead and mill those up. So into this bowl of the mixer, I'm doing 570 grams of filtered water. I'm doing a double batch of bread here, and I'm going to use 200 grams of sourdough starter. I'm not doubling the amount of sourdough starter in the recipe because I don't think you need more than 200 grams. So I'm just going to incorporate that into the water and then add a half cup of honey and a half cup of melted butter. So I got the liquid ingredients in here. I'm going to wait to add the salt and the yeast because I'm using freshly milled flour. So first I'm going to add it, first I'm going to add the flour, then I'm going to mix it. And then I'm gonna let it sit for like 30 minutes just to let the flour absorb the liquid. Now I'm adding in my 900 grams of flour and just letting it mix until there are no dry bits left. And then I'll turn off the mixer. Let it rest for 30 minutes. When the 30 minutes is up, add 18 grams of sea salt and 2 teaspoons of yeast. And now you can knead it for 10 to 15 minutes until it looks smooth and elastic. The reason I like to add yeast is because I like a subtle sourdough sandwich bread, and I like to make it in the same day. You can do authentic sourdough and hold off the yeast and just let it ferment naturally, or you can even do a combination of the two and add the yeast later in the process so it's sort of half fermented. You do what you want, but this is how I like to make my sandwich bread. Now I'm moving on to sourdough bagels from this book, and this timeline gives me kind of an idea of how long it will take. So I'm starting this in the afternoon, and I'm gonna let it ferment in the fridge overnight. I haven't made this recipe before, so I'm just trying it out in this video. I'm using hard red wheat and hard white wheat. Here are my ingredients. So you start off by making a slurry. I've measured out the full amount of water I need, which is 472 grams, and using a little bit of that for the slurry. Then I added 29 grams of malt syrup and then 7 grams of diastatic malt powder, as well as 29 grams of sugar and 18 grams of salt. Mix that up really well, and then you will add that to the bowl of the mixer. Now I'm adding the rest of the water and 848 grams of the flour. This recipe actually uses a high protein all-purpose flour, but I'm using freshly milled. And so I probably did too much flour. And then you're supposed to just kind of put the sourdough starter into the dough as it's mixing, just kind of break it up into little bits. You want 197 grams of sourdough starter. And just keep kneading it until it's elastic and passes the window pane test. Now I'm moving on to my sandwich bread. It has risen beautifully, so I'm going to shape this and put it into the loaf pans. I'm spraying the pans down with some avocado oil just to grease them, and I will shape my loaves and then let them proof for another 45 minutes or so in the loaf pans. Something I wanted to mention about this sandwich bread is you can control different aspects of it. So if you want it to be more of a naturally fermented dough, you could hold off on adding the yeast until later in the process so that the dough can ferment longer. But if you're in a hurry, you can add yeast at the beginning like I did, and it will be ready within a couple of hours, which is great. So it's not authentic sourdough, but I do think adding some of the sourdough makes it a little tastier and also adds some of those benefits of the fermentation. But one last thing to note is you can also make this just a completely yeasted bread. You don't have to add the starter at all. You can compensate for that by adding 100 extra grams of flour and water, since that is what was in the starter. All right, I am pleased with how my dough looks. It's a very dense dough, which I expected with a bagel dough. I haven't done this recipe before, but it looks pliable. And I think it's gonna work. So now we're gonna put it in this container for the bulk fermentation. So this dough needs to rest for 3 hours. I don't need to stretch and fold. I don't need to do anything. I'm just gonna cover it up, leave it here for the next 2 to 3 hours. My bread is looking perfect. It has risen to the top of the pan, which is what you want, and now it's ready to go in the oven. I'm pleasantly surprised with how well things are going right now, because I feel like every time I do any sort of cooking or baking marathon, just a bunch of things go wrong. So hopefully things continue along this smooth path. Let's just say this one was a learning experience for me, but we'll get to that later. I am baking my bread at 375 for 35 to 40 minutes. You want the internal temperature to reach 190 degrees. Mine didn't quite reach that yet, so it's going back in the oven for a few more minutes. When it's done, try to let it cool completely on a cooling rack. The top is a little bit overly browned. I think that if that's happening in your oven, you could put a little bit of foil over the top near the end, or you could bake it at 350 for maybe the same amount of time, maybe a little bit longer. I would just take the internal temperature and make sure it's at 190 and just keep an eye on it. So I'm gonna let this cool down. My bagel dough has been sitting on the counter for a few hours, so now I'm going to divide it up and shape them. I have my scale out because I'm going to cut up this dough and trying to divide them into 12 equal pieces that are 125 grams each. Line a baking pan with some parchment paper and some cornmeal, and this prevents the bagels from sticking. And now I'm going to show you how I shape my bagels. From what I understand about bagels, you want to make the hole pretty large because as it rises, the hole will begin to close up. So I tried to do that here. It was very easy to shape, but the dough was still feeling pretty dense. This looks like a tedious process, but it's kind of fun. It's like working with Play-Doh, so I think I could get my kids involved and get them to shape the bagels next time. But my husband loves to eat bagels every morning, so I'm hoping this becomes a natural part of my weekly routine so we can replace any store-bought bagels with a really healthy homemade version. All right, this is now going to go in my outdoor refrigerator so it can cold proof overnight. I can tell you where I think I went wrong. I think I used too much flour, and then I also didn't let it rise on the counter after I shaped it, and I think I let it sit and ferment just a little bit too long on the counter before shaping it, leaving a dense, slightly sour bagel that wasn't fully proofed. My sandwich bread turned out great though. I usually use this to make sandwiches for my kids and send them off to school. We also love to eat it warm with butter. It also makes a mean grilled cheese sandwich. Early the next morning, I got some water on to boil and I have my oven turned on to 425. As you can see, my bagels didn't really rise at all overnight, so this was concerning to see this in the morning, but I just wanted to go ahead and finish the job and see how they turned out. While that's happening, I'm making a little snack for my kids for school. I make this all the time, especially when I don't have anything and I don't have a lot of time to make like granola bars or anything like that. These are peanut butter energy bites. It's a recipe from the Minimalist Baker, and I modify it a little bit, but it has oats, chia seeds, flaxseed, peanut butter, maple syrup, flaxseed, some protein powder. I really like this vanilla protein powder from Clean Simple Eats. I also add some chocolate chips, and so it tastes like a chocolate peanut butter cup. And then I scoop them into little bite-sized balls, and I put a few of those in each of my kids' lunchbox so they have something to go with their sandwich and their fruit so that they are nice and full and full of protein as they learn at school. So now my water is boiling. I'm gonna add 1 to 2 tablespoons of barley malt syrup. You can also do honey. This just helps the bagels to become a little bit sweeter. I'm gonna boil each bagel for a minute total. It's 30 seconds on each side, but these bagels just literally sunk straight to the bottom, which shows me they weren't proofed at all. They eventually did rise to the top, but things were not looking too promising at the moment. And then you just transfer it to a wire rack with a towel underneath and let them drip dry until you're finished boiling. And then you'll add them all to a pan and bake them at 425 for about 20 to 25 minutes. I sometimes like to spray some water into the oven to create some steam, which gives bagels and other baked goods a glossy look like this. So they weren't terrible. As you can see, they were edible. My husband ate that one. He didn't love it, but he liked it. However, the next batch that I had, I baked them a little bit too long and they were very hard and too hard to eat. So I just threw them all away and it was a sad morning. But we are moving forward with lots of hope in this new day. It's going to be a big baking day. And I'm starting off with soft sourdough dinner rolls. These are going to be delicious. You start by making a tongzong with 166 grams of whole milk and 41 grams of white flour. And then you mix those together and then just whisk them up on a stove at medium heat until it turns into a thick paste and let that cool on a plate. We're going to use that in the dinner rolls and it's going to help to keep them soft and delicious. Time to get my apron on. I'm really determined today to keep the kitchen clean and rolling smoothly as I bake all these different items. I'm just gonna throw them all in here because this is how I function. It's easier that way. I have my beef stroganoff. It's gonna thaw on the counter throughout the day and we're gonna have this for dinner. I fed my starter last night so I would have a lot for today, and I'm measuring out 193 grams of starter for this recipe. I'm adding 180 grams of water, 38 grams of sugar, 11 grams of sea salt, the sourdough starter, and then all of the tongzong, and then slowly add in the flour. As usual, I would say add a little bit less flour than you think you need if you're using freshly milled flour. So add it little by little, and if it's starting to look too dense, then stop. I made the mistake all day of adding the full amount of flour to every recipe, and I learned afterwards, I had an aha moment that I just need to do less, just less freshly milled flour, and I will have less problems. So now we're gonna let this dough sit and rest for an autolyse, and we'll come back to it and mix it again and start adding the butter. I have set the butter out on the counter so it is softened. You want to add 95 grams of unsalted butter. I only had salted, so I'm using that and I didn't notice any difference. But at this moment, I had another aha moment and I realized that anytime you're adding butter into a dough after the dough has already been mixed, which is common for brioche dough, the dough hook works better if you have an embouchure mixer. So, this mixer is pretty new for me, and same with using freshly milled flour, So I am just making a lot of new things and experimenting a lot. So I'm learning a lot as I go. And I hope you are too, and I hope you're enjoying it. I've actually had my grain mill for a long time, about 10 years, my Nutri-Mill, which I love. I haven't had any problems with it, but I didn't use it as frequently for baking bread until I started to understand the health benefits behind it. I don't think I fully understand that earlier, so for me it was just fun. But now it's more important to me to use freshly milled grains as much as possible. My dinner rolls are starting the bulk fermentation, which will last a few hours. I'm going to pause my baking marathon for a minute and talk about the sponsor of today's video. Thank you so much to InYouth for sponsoring today's video. InYouths offers beautiful, customizable LED mirrors. Choose from 30 different size options and classic minimalist designs to perfectly fit your space. Get a clear HD reflection with adjustable brightness and color temperature to suit your needs. These mirrors are perfectly suited for a bathroom or a living space, and you can either plug in the mirror or hardwire it. InYouth mirrors are built to last with waterproof protection and a seamless mounting system. I'm going to show you exactly how easy it is to hang up these mirrors. I did it all by myself and I'm so pleased with the results. I have selected the Ira mirror for my photography studio. It is beautiful and modern and classic and timeless. I'm going to hang it up on this wall right here. I have clients come in here for photo shoots and I don't have a proper setup for them to check out their makeup and their hair and all that before they go over there to take photos. So I'm going to take care of that today. I just want to show you how beautiful this is. It has a clean and minimalist look. I love the arch. It also lights up. So I actually have a makeup artist that comes here and gets my clients ready before their photos, and she doesn't have a proper setup for a mirror. So usually my clients are just using the little handheld mirror, but now we have this and they'll be able to fully check themselves out before they get their photos done, which is very important when you're getting professional photos done, that you know what you look like and that you're happy and all that. So now let's get this thing hung on the wall. So first I'm gonna measure where the top of the mirror is and where the bracket goes. And so I know where to hang the brackets, and now I'm marking where I'll be putting the brackets. This long ruler with a level really helps for stuff like this. The mirror comes with hardware, so you have everything you need. I am checking for studs. I have one stud that I can use and the other one is drywall, so I'll be using drywall anchors for that. I'm just checking for level, and now that the brackets are in, it's as simple as sliding it on. You want to take the cord and pull it off to the side so that the mirror sits flat, and then you can plug it in, or if you've hardwired it, the wires will go into the electricity behind the mirror, which would work well for a bathroom. My kids were very much enjoying playing with the mirror. InYouth's mirrors are so customizable, and they offer factory direct pricing, so you can enjoy competitive prices with direct delivery from their factory straight to your home. InYouth offers 11 different feature options, including Bluetooth speakers, clocks, Wi-Fi weather stations, and demisters to prevent condensation for a personalized experience. So upgrade your space with InYouth's mirrors. Okay, now let's get back to baking. Right. I've made a decision. I'm moving my mixer over here just while I'm filming. I feel like this is a much easier setup, and so we will continue from here. Okay. The next thing that I'm making is a hearty sandwich bun or burger bun. I'm not even gonna wash this bowl. It's still got a little bit of the other dough in it, the dinner rolls, but they have pretty much the same ingredients. So I think I'm going to, let me get my ingredients. We have flour, butter and eggs, and obviously some water too. So the first thing I need to do is measure out my ingredients, which I'm gonna do straight into the bowl. I added 182 grams of whole milk and beaten eggs. That's about 4 eggs, 26 grams of sugar, 21 grams of water, and 10 grams of sea salt, and then 189 grams of sourdough starter. I actually read the recipe wrong and did 84 grams of water because I was reading the wrong part. So you'll see my dough is a little bit on the wetter side. And with the mixer on, I'm adding all of the flour that the recipe called for. And I did use freshly milled. I used the full amount, but because I had a little bit of extra water and a little bit of extra egg in this, the dough turned out nice and soft. So this is my dinner rolls here. It's time for me to do my first shape and fold. You want to do this every 30 minutes for the first hour and a half or so. So you're going to do this 3 times. You're basically developing some structure in your dough. So you just want to stretch that gluten out, fold it, and then let it continue to ferment. So now, because my dough was pretty wet, I'm adding even more flour until it looks like a good consistency. It's still pretty wet. We're gonna let it sit and absorb that water. And while that's going on, I'm moving on to the next thing that I'll be working on, which is sourdough pizza dough. So I'm going to do half freshly milled flour and half all-purpose flour for this. I love this recipe so much, and so I'm gonna double it. It's from Natasha's Kitchen. I'm doing 500 grams of freshly milled flour, hard white wheat, and then 500 grams of all-purpose flour. And then you wanna do 24 grams of sea salt. Mix that all together with your hands. At this moment, you can see my dread and disappointment as I realize that I did too much salt. I just did double the amount of salt. I forgot I had already doubled the recipe that I was following, and so in my head I thought I still needed to double it. I really should have caught myself because I knew that 2 tablespoons of salt is definitely way too much. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save half of this flour. I already mixed it in, so I'm gonna take half of this flour out, put it in a container, and use it the next time I make pizza dough, and refill it with half of fresh flour that hasn't been salted. Okay, so I'm measuring out 500 grams of flour from the bowl, and then the rest of it I'm putting in containers. And now I'm gonna put an extra 500 grams of flour into the bowl with the other flour. So hopefully that will even it all out, and it will be the right amount of salt. Now add 670 grams of water and 200 grams of active sourdough starter, and just get that mixed up as best as you can. I like to use a hard wooden spatula for this, and once it gets almost fully incorporated, I switch over to my dough spatula to really scrape the sides of the bowl. Now cover and rest for 30 minutes. I'm going back to my sourdough dinner rolls and giving them another stretch and fold. Now I'm going back to my hamburger buns because they're done with the auto-lees, and I'm adding 182 grams of softened unsalted butter. I'm actually using salted butter because that's really usually all I ever have, but you decide how you want to go about that. So I'm just mixing it and kneading it for 10 to 15 minutes until the dough is smooth and elastic. This is going into a bulk fermentation container, and we'll go through the same series of stretch and folds that I've done for the dinner rolls. Now I'm gonna move on to making my bagels all over again. I think I like a sweeter bagel. I don't like that sour, savory type of bagel. And so I found a recipe from Generation Acres Farm. It is specific for freshly milled flour. So I'm going to use 5 cups of hard white wheat flour, and I already milled it right here. So I have pretty much everything out. It's a mess right now. And I'm gonna start right in the bowl. The bowl is still kind of messy from the previous thing. We're just gonna keep rolling with it. All right, so you start with 1.5 cups of warm, that's warm enough, I think. Yeah, warm water. The recipe calls for olive oil, but I'm gonna use coconut oil because I just don't love the olive oil that I have right now for baked goods. So I think coconut oil will work a little better. Now we're gonna start by adding 3 cups of flour, get that all blended together. I'm also going to use some sunflower lecithin. This helps to soften the dough, especially when using freshly milled flour. I'm only doing a teaspoon. And also, because I have it, I'm going to add dry malt diastatic powder, which is kind of a known ingredient to include in bagels. And I'm gonna just do 1 teaspoon. It helps with the rising and structure of the bagel. It also adds a nice flavor. And then slowly add the rest of the flour. We're gonna use about 5 cups total. My burger bun dough is getting its first set of stretch and folds. This is gonna help develop the dough and the structure of it. It looks like I may have used too much flour again. I'm getting this bagel dough mixed up and then I'm gonna let it rest for a little bit. And while that's happening, I'm going to knead my sourdough pizza dough until I get a somewhat smooth ball. And you're gonna need to use some flour while you do this. You can do this straight in the bowl or on a clean work surface. And then you're gonna put it into an oiled bowl and let it rise for the next couple of hours. So back to my bagel dough. Now I've got the mixer back on and I'm trying to develop that gluten. And I reached out to Kristen over at Generation Acres Farm for some tips. And she said, try not using as much flour. With freshly milled flour, you really want to watch it, and when you feel like the dough is the right consistency, just stop adding flour and it will be a lot easier. So bagel dough is very dense, but every recipe for bagels I've ever done, the dough has always been really dense. So I'm hoping I am on the right path here. My bagel dough is going on the counter with everything else to rise. Now I really need to clean. When you're working with a lot of doughs, your sink can get really disgusting. There's dough residue everywhere, and so I'm cleaning everything, the cutting board, and then I'm cleaning the racks of the sink. I'm scrubbing the sink. I'm just trying to get a fresh start because we have some more to do today. All right, I have about 45 minutes before I need to start doing things again. It's gonna have some lunch and a coffee. I'm gonna make some peanut butter toast in a minute and just relax. My bagel dough rose quickly, and so it's ready to be shaped. It's nice when you can have a recipe that just uses yeast because it goes so quickly. I'm so used to sourdough where things have to take hours and hours. So now I'm just shaping my bagels. By now I feel like I'm a pro at shaping bagels, and I'm feeling much more confident this time around. But this is my method for shaping bagels. You kind of tightly roll it up into a rope shape and then roll it out till it's about 12 inches long, depending on the thickness of your bagel. And then attach it like this, turn it around on the other side of your hand, and then roll it back and forth to seal the edges there. And there you have it. After shaping these, they only need about 10 to 15 minutes to rest and rise. So while that's happening, I'm gonna fill up a pot of water and get that boiling and turn on the oven. I'm adding a couple tablespoons of honey and barley malt syrup to the water. This will help the bagels to become sweeter and softer. These are already looking so much better than the first round of bagels, and so I'm boiling them about 30 seconds on each side. Be careful not to splash boiling water on yourself when you add these in and when you flip them. You're going to bake these at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes until golden brown. The sourdough dinner rolls will be next in the oven, so the dough is ready for shaping. I'm going to divide this up into about 16 little balls. Each dough ball will be about 70 grams, and you're going to make tight little ball shapes and then pack them in next to each other in the baking dish. Now this is going to rise for another hour or two. Moving on to my burger buns. We're pretty much doing the same exact thing, except each piece of dough will be 125 grams, and we're making larger bun shapes. And they need to be spaced out pretty far on the baking sheets because these are larger buns. And so we're gonna shape these and then let them rise. I have multiple trays ready with parchment paper for those buns. My bagels are finished. This dough is softer to work with, which means it's going to make a delicious burger bun, but it helps if you fold the little dough ball a couple of times and then apply tension and turn it into a round shape. So once I'm done with that, they're going to rise. We're going to cover those up. They need about another hour or two. All right, well, I'm at the point in my bread baking marathon where there's nothing left for me to do because my dough is just rising. However, I was planning on making one more thing today. I didn't think I would have the time to get to it, but I guess I do. So I'm gonna make tortillas. And I made this in a previous video, I think last week, but I'm gonna make it again because it deserves its own special spot in this video because it's such a good recipe for tortillas. I was gonna do sourdough tortillas, but I don't have any more starter, and I would have had to start that earlier in the day or yesterday. So there are lots of times in my life where I maybe might want sourdough, but can't because of the timing. So that's when these kind of recipes come in clutch. It's good to have kind of your yeasted bread recipes that are your go-tos and your sourdough recipes so that you can kind of pick and choose based on what kind of day you're having and what you need. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to use hard white wheat berries and kamut. Anytime I have extra freshly milled flour laying around, I stick it in a container and it slowly collects. You can see I have several different kinds. That way nothing's going to waste and I can use this for muffins and cookies and things like that. My mill has really been through it today. We have milled a lot of flour today. First, I'm doing 3/4 cup of milk or 180 grams, a tablespoon of white vinegar, and a teaspoon of salt. Mix that up and you're gonna microwave that for 1 minute. In this bowl, I have 240 grams of freshly milled flour. I did half hard white wheat and half kamut. And now I'm adding in 1.5 teaspoons of a good quality baking powder. Mix that up and then drizzle in 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And with a fork, mix that up to form some crumbly flour. And then pour in the milk. It's okay if the milk is a little bit clumpy or oddly textured because we microwaved it with the vinegar. That's okay and normal. Mix that all up just to get it combined. And then you're gonna cover it up and let it rest for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, put some flour on that surface and knead it until it is mostly a smooth ball, and then add it back into an oiled bowl and coat the dough ball with oil. I used olive oil here. Then cover it up and let it rest for another 10 minutes. Now you are ready to divide and shape. So I'm dividing them into 10 equal pieces, and then you want to form them into tight little dough balls and then let them rest for about 10 minutes. During that time, you can start heating up your hot cast iron skillet and get a plate with a towel ready for the cooking process. The process of making tortillas can be tedious, but it's really quite simple. You just want your cast iron skillet to be nice and hot, and it only takes about 30 seconds per side, maybe a little bit longer, and your tortilla is cooked. So I like to try to make these and then have some in the freezer, but if I don't have any made, I will buy a batch from the store and use that. But it's great when we can use freshly milled flour with our tortillas. All right, for the pizza. This recipe is from Natasha's Kitchen, and she originally has you separate it out into 4 dough balls and put it in these little containers and then stick it in the fridge. But since I doubled it, I'm gonna do 4 of the smaller ones, and then I'm gonna do 2 larger ones. So these will make a large pizza, like a normal size, and these make sort of like medium-sized pizzas. Medium/small, which is sometimes nice because it's easier to actually cook the smaller pizzas. They're easier to work with. So that's what I'm gonna do. We can have a mix of things. And these will just go in my fridge, and once they're fermented a little bit more, I'm going to stick the extra ones in the freezer. I'm probably gonna wrap them up and then stick them in the freezer, but then I will keep these in the fridge and use them later this week. Okay, let's get to work. You can see the bubbles. So this did what it was supposed to do today. It's always nice to see that. I'll take this little glob of dough, separate it out. Sourdough pizza is the best pizza crust you can make. I have made a lot of different pizzas, but definitely the best I've ever made is with this recipe. I think this is like one of the best things to prep ahead of time and put in your fridge, even when you don't have plans yet on what you're gonna eat, because pizza is just so easy to make when the dough is already ready for you. Pizza 1 is done. So I did end up using the 4 smaller ones later on in the week, and I ended up dividing them into halves. And so we had a bunch of smaller pizzas, and I found the best way to cook these is on a hot cast iron skillet, just like I do the tortillas, but then adding the toppings on the dough once it starts to bubble up, and the cheese and all that, and then drizzle it with some olive oil and some seasonings and stick it in the oven on the broiler function so it's super hot. and then just give it, I don't know, basically like 5 minutes. It takes no time at all. And then you have this crispy, perfectly cooked little sourdough pizza. So delicious. But for now, that pizza dough will go in the refrigerator, and after a day, I will transfer the larger ones in the freezer or whatever I haven't used. I wrapped it in some plastic wrap and then put it in a bag, and so it is preserved. Quite a lot of bread. So I got out an egg and a tablespoon of milk and whisked those together, and now I'm brushing that on top of the soft dinner rolls. And this is going to go into the oven now. Bake it at 400 for the first 20 minutes, then turn the pan around and lower the temperature to 350 and bake it for another 20 minutes. All right, while we're waiting on that to bake, I want to try one of these bagels and see how it turned out. Ah, looks great. I like the flavor of these so much more. They're sweet and they're chewy, but they're still soft enough. And I think once we toast them and put some toppings on it, everyone's gonna be very happy with these. So yay! I'm very pleased with how the bagels turned out. They were so yummy. I ended up eating a lot of them, and I never eat bagels. So now I want to make them not only for my husband, but also for me, and my kids loved them too. So my next variation of these is going to be blueberry bagels. So yeah, I'm just really excited to have a recipe that I can depend on using freshly milled flour. I'm going to go ahead and store these away in a plastic bag. I like to reuse these bags. I use them for bagels and also loaves of bread. And now moving on to dinner. So I made a freezer meal of beef stroganoff in a previous video. It's been thawing first on the counter, and then I transferred it to the fridge, so it's nice and soft now. So I'm just gonna add it to this skillet and slowly start warming it up. I have a pot of water that I'm gonna set to boil. I'm salting that water, adding my egg noodle pasta. I'm mixing some arrowroot powder with some water to make a slurry, and just a little bit, not even a full tablespoon, and that will thicken up this sauce just a little bit. And then I'm gonna add sour cream. See, it's like instantly thicker. You want to do about 1.5 cups of sour cream. This is done. Just gonna add a little bit of butter to this so it doesn't stick. I'm using that same egg wash now on the burger buns, and those will go in the oven next at 400 for about 20 minutes. I ended up just shoving all the pans in there. I put one on the bottom rack, which, isn't the best spot for it, but we're just trying to get everything baked at once. So here is a delicious dinner. Oh, that looks so amazing. The soft dinner rolls were a hit. The only critique I have is that they were a little sour, so my kitchen is warm, so next time I won't ferment them quite as long. This is comfort food at its finest. You can dip your bread in the beef stroganoff. Such a perfect meal. My family is about to walk in here any minute, and dinner is ready to go, fresh out of the oven, so it's gonna be good. I ended up adding a honey butter to the rolls to sweeten them up a little bit.
So they remade it, but they accidentally gave us the one that they...
My family is home now, and the house is buzzing with excitement. My hamburger buns are finished. I'm gonna let those cool, and then I will add them to the freezer so that we can have them ready anytime we want. I'm done. I made this beef stroganoff in a previous video where I cooked 5 nourishing freezer meals for my sister postpartum, and this turned out so delicious. I made a double batch so that we'd have some for ourselves, and everyone loved it. Everyone raved over it, so I'll definitely be making this again. And here is the grand finale of everything I've been working on yesterday and today. It was a productive day in the kitchen. It was a lot of work, but I'm glad I got it done. All right, that is a wrap on this video. We had a pretty eventful 2 days. This was a baking marathon for sure, but I'm pretty excited now to have all this bread to stock our freezer and just our pantry. So we have our sourdough pizza crust, enough to make 4 small pizzas and 2 large pizzas. We have tortillas, we have made dinner, we have pulled apart dinner rolls, sandwich bread, burger buns, and 2 kinds of bagels. So that should last us a good bit. All right, well, I hope you guys had fun, and I will see you next week in my next video.